Hey guys, DM Scotty here. Good to have you with me. Today I'm going to do an unusual project. I'm doing necrotic meteors that I'm working on for my game, and yeah, it's a little bit of an unusual project, but interesting, and can be adapted to other things. So let's go to the table, and I'll show you how I started this unusual project. Alright, for this craft I'm going to need some toilet paper, so I'll pull a hunk off here, pretty big hunk. And then I'm going to kind of squish it up and then wet it. And then squeeze the water out. So I end up with a rough ball. Okay. Now, the reason I'm using the toilet paper for this instead of like a foam ball is I want it to have a rougher texture than just a totally round ball. I want it to be a little, you know, not quite circular. Okay. So now I'm going to use my white glue. All right. And then this is just a soaking technique, so I'm going to just start putting white glue on it. And then I'll just kind of rub the white glue over the surface. So now what we'll do is we'll let this dry. I'll put white glue on once or twice again, and that'll reinforce the ball. So now we're finished that. Now we're finished with that, we'll move to the next phase. So the next phase of this entails the edge of the crater, and I've just made these rings out of paper towels and soap glue. So I just took this piece of paper, made the rings on the piece of paper, soaked them in the glue, and now they're ready to go. So now I'll just pull these off and put them on the bases. So for the base itself, I just measured a circle that the crater could fit on. And I also did a little bit of rough around the edges. I don't like it to be a perfect circle, so I did a bit of a rough. I also, if you can see the texture on there, I did some texture on it with the glue gun to reinforce the cardboard, and I kind of pulled it out, like, you know, the impact, you know, would shoot out. So now I just need to attach this to the base here. So I'll glue that with the hot glue gun. So now that my meteor has hardened up, I want to do a bit of trimming on it. And I'm going to take some craft scissors and just kind of, I'm going to cut the bottom of this off. This could be a bit tricky. These are nice because you can get more tension. And this is kind of simulating that the meteor is in the ground, like in the ground itself. Okay. Okay. So now it sits. It'll sit closer to the ground. All right. So now we will glue that to the crater, and then we'll work from there. All right. So I've got hot glue on this, and I'll just pop it into the crater hole there. All right. So we'll let that harden up and come back to the next step. Okay, so now we're at the detail stage, so I'm going to take my small hot glue gun, and I'm going to put some glue on the meteor itself and just kind of pull it around. This will give it a nice texture and kind of cover up the folds of the meteorite itself. I had a big chunk there. Also, you're going to want to blend it in, go around the edge, and blend it in to the base. Okay, so I'll work on that and then we'll come back. Alright, so here's my finished meteor, and here's a guy for scale, so pretty cool. Now when you're doing this and you put the glue gun inside the ring and outside the ring and pull it up, you know, to give the detail, do that twice, because if you do it once, it'll look more like still like a ring and not a crater. So make sure that you do it once, pull it up, and then go through it again and then pull it up, and that'll really give it that kind of crater look. Now what I want to do now is I want to add a little bit of flocking to this, so I'm going to use my construction sand. So here I have the Meteor, and I want to add a little more detail with some construction sand. And those of you that know me know that it's just standard sand with all the different size aggregates. It's not play sand. Okay. So now I'm just going to use my white glue, and I'm going to do some areas around this that I can stick the sand to. So I'll just make a patch there, a patch there. You're not trying to cover this up. You're just adding some areas of sand here. Get some inside. Okay, that should be good enough. So now I'll just set that in the center of my paper, grab my little cup, and then just start dumping it over the glue. Now I like to use the white glue instead of the glue gun, because it's just you have a lot more work time, and I think it's more secure actually than the glue gun, because the sand tends to sit on top of the glue gun's glue, as opposed to the glue saturating, because the glue will soak into the sand, and particularly the Elmer's glue all, because it's not as viscous as some white glues. So it'll tend to soak into the sand and give it a really nice grip on the surface. So that's why I prefer to use, those are some of the reasons I prefer to use this instead of just using the hot glue gun. So, alright, so we'll let this dry and then we'll come back for the next step. So now my crater is dried, so I'm going to take the sand, knock that off. Alright, there we go. So we have some nice flocking on there. So now what I'm going to do with this now is I'm going to paint it white instead of black. Now normally I would paint it black because you get the shading and everything in there. But I want to paint it white because I want the thing to look like it's glowing. So I'll paint it white first, and then I'll show you how we paint it up. So moving on to painting, I have it all base white, and you can see there some more of the detail. It's easier to see when it's painted. So now the idea of this is I want to have this like a glowing meteorite, okay? So what I'm going to do is I do want to have some shading inside the crater itself, so I'm going to wet down my brush, all right? And I'm going to use a dark brown, and I'm going to use it very wet, and then I'm going to kind of go around the inside of the crater. And this will just give it a little bit of shading. And then right up to the edge there. And so I'll finish that up and then we'll come back. So here the interior of the crater is completely washed with brown, and you can see that I didn't go past the rim. I also didn't go on the meteorite itself. Now the edge, when it's painted white like this, it's really hard to paint brown. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a black and then just paint the edge of the meteorite, of the crater, I mean. So that'll make it just easier to paint the regular brown paint. Okay, so now we'll finish that and move on to the next step. So for the necrotic color, I want to use kind of a sickly green. I'm going to use a lemon lime green. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is paint the entire globe with the lemon lime, and then with the brown, with the crater itself, I'm going to kind of dry brush over the raised areas with the green, and that'll give a nice illusion that the crater itself is glowing. Okay. All right. So now I'll finish this up and we'll move on to the next step. So here we go. I have the green finished. It hasn't dried up yet, but it looks nice. It really looks like that crater is glowing. So now I've got the darker outside, and I'm going to use my dark brown, the burr number, and I'm going to paint over the outside area. So I'll just go around and finish this up, and then we'll come back for the next step. I do want to add a little bit of different color to the green. I'm going to use this glow green, and it's kind of like a fluorescent green. It's a very thin color, so you won't notice it that much, but it does give a little bit of color variation, just a touch, and so that'll give it some a little bit of interest. Okay, it's not a huge difference, but okay, you can't see it very well, but yeah, it does give a little bit of more interest to that. So now I'll let that dry and move on to the next step. So we're all dry and ready to go. So my next phase, I want to give this kind of the meteorite, kind of like a shell that looks like the interior is all glowing and everything. So I'm going to use a black metallic. So it's just a black with metallic flecks in it. And I'll just start painting that. So it's really picking up, so it's kind of like reverse shading. It's picking up the texture, but leaving the under green to show through. Okay. So now I'll just finish that up. Now with the circle, the ring, the crater, the remaining part of the crater, I'm just going to use an earth brown to highlight the dark brown, and then I will paint it like I normally do with earth type projects. Like I'll paint the stones the gray, and then I'll do a little bit of highlight of a dolphin gray on top, and that'll kind of pick the stones out. So there we go, that's a nice necrotic meteor there. Alright, so we'll finish up the edging like I said, and then we'll come back to the table and show you what it looks like. So here's our adventurers adventuring, and suppose they hear this like whooshing out of the sky, and they see this meteorite come crashing down into the ground, makes a crater. You could even like do effects where, you know, if they have to roll, if they fall back from the impact. It could do some kind of necrotic effect, like it could cause them to lose life or drain life, or it could raise any RPG's favorite skellies, you know, from the ground or something like that, and then they attack. So yeah, there we go. Looks really nice. Great set pieces. You could also do if the PCs are in an entrenched place, these meteors could come streaming down, and not only can they do damage from the hits, they could spawn, you know, undead and that kind of thing. So yeah, really cool way to think about it. And there we go. So really nice. Now remember that this technique could always be used for other things. You could do regular meteors like glowing red, or, you know, other colors. I was really going kind of for the sickly necrotic green, but you could, you know, make them any color, make them more meteor-like, and use them that way. So there we go, and I will see you next time. Hey crafters, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the DM's Craft. Make sure to subscribe, and I have tons of other videos, as you can see. I am the originator of the 2.5D method of crafting tiles. I also do dirt cheap terrain for the table. If all this intrigues you, make sure you check out all the videos below. Also, join my forum. We have lots of great crafters on there who give advice. I have a link above and below. And last but not least, remember, go forth and craft!